and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton. And today we're going to meet a local artist whose art is unique. You'll enjoy this. His name is Butch Kuchta. Welcome.
Thank you.
I have to say, we're friends. So I'm going to start out by saying I already kind of know you. And I think what's so interesting is people might not think of you as an artist when they first meet you. They might think artists are quiet and introspective and, you know, artsy-fartsy, and that's not so much you, Butch. Your art can be very loud, as a matter of fact.
Well, yeah, when you're swinging a chainsaw, people don't think of that as art.
Yeah, so let's talk about, because when I first got acquainted with your art, it really was very much the chainsaw works, and it was everything from very, very large sculptures to small pieces that I thought you couldn't possibly do with a chainsaw.
Well, in fact, we have one of them, and I don't know where it went, with the cards in it.
Yeah, and I know you've got the eagle there, eagles.
The eagle is a chainsaw carving. The little bear...
I think that one's not on set right now.
It didn't come up, okay. But I've actually done chainsaw carving so big that you had to load them in a truck to move them. Not a little truck, but a big truck.
This sculpture, basically.
Right.
I mean, big sculpture, not interior sculpture necessarily.
Right, exterior sculptures. Two, I actually carried one around in my pocket for a long time. And it was exactly 1.5 inches by 3/4 of an inch wide. And it was a bear, and you could tell exactly what it was. And it was all done with a chainsaw, nothing else.
How many chainsaws do you have, Butch?
At my peak, I owned 14 chainsaws.
What's your biggest?
4-foot blade. Anything beyond that, it just gets cumbersome. Yeah. I've got a chainsaw for actually taking the tree down.
Okay.
Down to the smallest blade would be about 8 inches, and it's a custom tip. I got as much money tied up in the tip and the saw blades as I do the chainsaw itself.
How did you learn this? I mean, it's not, I don't know of any other chainsaw artists in the region. I've seen some nationally, but how did you develop this skill and this passion?
Basically, I saw somebody do it. We were in northern Minnesota. We go up there. My wife's family has a cabin up there, and we go up there for the summers. And we were up there one summer, and they had a guy who was doing a demonstration. His name was Jerry Faber. And he was doing a demo on chainsaw carving. And I just got lost in it. It was the neatest thing I had ever seen. I've been carving since I was in Cub Scouts. I started with the bar of soap. Ivory soap is the best thing to use.
Every Weebelo knows the bar of soap.
And a butter knife, because that doesn't leave permanent scars. So I started there, and I got hooked. And all through high school, I carved all through high school. It was my final art project for my senior year, was a wood carving. And I kind of set it down when we started having children. And
you got to have a real job.
You got to have a real job.
You know,
swinging metal for a living and carving, it doesn't all go together at the same time. So we kind of let it go. And then as my children got older, they didn't need Dad as much, didn't want Dad as much around. So Dad had to find something to do with his time. And I saw this guy chainsaw carving in Minnesota, and I talked to him. Every time he took a break, I'd wander over and talk to him. And finally, he looked at me and says, I know this. You're going to try this, aren't you? I went, yes. He goes, well, you got nothing to lose but an arm or a leg. That's a true story. Jerry was a card. So I just watched what he did and went back to the cabin. And my father-in-law had a chainsaw for clearing brush, a very small chainsaw, smallest one they make. It was a Stihl. And I said, Dad, can I borrow your chainsaw? He says, sure. And I grabbed a chunk of wood and the chainsaw and went out into the forest so I wouldn't bother anybody with all the noise, and came back in with a carving. And it was fun, and I just got hooked.
So, but you're doing less chainsaw art now, because I'm looking around and these are more refined, more polished, more, you know.
Well, the wife won't let me bring the chainsaw in the house for whatever reason.
Darn her.
And the problem is, it's a big sculpture. Like I said, you can do small stuff, but process is you really want to do bigger, you want to do better, and you want to do more detail. And there's just not a market in the area for it. and the house was getting full of them. So during the summertime, when it's 100 degrees like it is now, I really don't want to stand out in the sun and run a chainsaw. And when it's the winter we had this last year, I don't want to be out there running a chainsaw. So I started developing the skills that I learned in Cub Scouts and brought it to what I think is a final end. Some of these are award-winning carvings, and there's some here that I didn't bring that I have award-winning.
Well, I see, you know, you have a lot of your ribbons and your awards up there. Where are you? Okay, so I saw you at Blue Skies Gallery, and you were doing demos, and you were working there. But you found really more of an online outlet for a lot of your pieces now, haven't you?
Yes. The online seemed to work better for us. And when I say us, this is a family affair. It really is. I have a daughter who has a degree in fine arts from JMU, who's very talented. And she also has computer skills. That the fact that she's
That's helpful.
A young person tells you that she has computer skills. Not
necessarily. I've got a young person with no computer skills.
Well, I have, you know, I know how to turn it on, and I can read email, and sometimes you get an answer. Sometimes somebody else gets an answer, who knows?
Right.
But, so she had the skills. And the problem was at Blue Skies was that you had to have somebody work there because it's a co-op.
Right. You had to work, you had to demonstrate. So what do you do for your full-time job?
My full-time job, I am a miscellaneous steel vendor. And I work for a small company in the area who happens to be a small company, but we're the biggest miscellaneous steel in the area, and it's Circle M Contracting.
So did you ever think about doing sculpture with steel? I mean, you're a welder, that skill, you know it. Do your vision ever come out that way?
I've done very limited, and what I've decided was that I do steel at work all day long, and the smells and burns, and I get that at work. So this was something different, more for relaxing. Your
escape. Well, let's look at some of your pieces. You want to start? I'm afraid to touch it. That's just gorgeous. Yes.
My problem is I look at them as just a chunk of wood.
Okay, so, let's do that then. You start out with, you've got your chunk of wood. Yep.
All right.
And you go and, like, get the lumber from the places that cut the trees down, right?
Correct.
Sometimes anyway.
When we're in northern Minnesota, I actually have the time and I get to do things that I normally don't do, like everybody else in their daily life, is schedule around their job and their family. When we're on vacation, we get to do something different. So while I'm on vacation, there's a lumber mill. There are several lumber mills in the area since we are in the Great North Woods.
Yeah.
And people make their living with the lumber industry. And I actually go to the mill and I talk to the people and I tell them what I'm looking for. And over the years, I've gotten to know them. And so what they do is they give me the raw wood. Now, if you look at this is a raw cut from a mill. And then what I do is this comes to me, and I get it cut into sections that I can transport.
Right, because it comes in bigger chunks initially, I'm sure.
It comes in chunks that it takes a forklift to move. And so I get them to process it down to the point where I can load it in the family vehicle, because I'm not taking a pickup truck or a special vehicle to bring this back.
Oh, right.
There's a funny story. The first year I found the mill, and when I first started this, I went to the lumber mill and I asked the guy for a piece about this big. And he didn't understand what I was asking for. I wasn't clear. So he brings this piece of wood back and it's 20 foot long. And it's about this size, but it's 20 foot long.
Because that's how long the tree was, right?
Right. He's not used to doing little pieces. So he looks at me and says, that'll be $550. And I'm thinking $550 for this much. And I think that's still a great deal, because if you go to the specialty stores in the area, this would run you about $25, $30. So I'm thinking $550, oh boy, that's a great deal. So I start reaching for my money, and he says, so where do you want me to put this? I said, well, you're going to cut it, right? And he goes, for what? And I'm thinking, 2 foot, you know. I said, well, it's $550 for how much? He said, the whole board. I went, I'll be right back. He said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to get more money. So we get back to the cabin, and I've got the whole top of the van covered in 20-foot planks about this size. And Sally says, how are we getting this home? I said, start looking at bus tickets because that's how the kids are getting home. The wood's going with me.
All right, so you start with the rough, and it could be a chainsaw, or it could be you use a lot of hand tools now.
Right.
So let's talk about some of the works that you have. That is just beautifully detailed. All right, I'm going to pick it up. I hope you trust me. You've got a couple of different kinds of wood here.
The main body of the carving, it's carousel horse, is basswood.
Okay.
And it's also called tupelo. It's a very light wood.
It's very lightweight.
Very light. I mean, did you pick? I mean, this is very light.
Yeah, yeah.
It's almost like a light pine or a balsa wood.
Yeah, it almost feels like a balsa, but it's sturdier.
It's a lot sturdier, and it has a better grain, which gives it the more stable surface. And it sands a little bit better, but it carves wonderfully and leaves you a nice edge, because sanding doesn't leave you as smooth a surface as a knife would.
Really?
Really. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll carve it down to where I want it, and then tweak it with a piece of sandpaper, and then carve it again to leave that nice. This is a replica of an existing carousel horse. And I did a lot of study. One of the things I love to do is read. And so what I do is when I get interested in a Santa Claus or a butterfly or whatever I'm doing, eagles, I read a lot about them and do a lot of research. And it helps when you're creating that to have the background information. So, you know, doing the research is half the fun for me.
Fun. I noticed you do a lot of eagles. You also do a lot of Santas. So let's talk about some of your Santas here. Two very different ones.
I do traditional Santas, which I don't think we have any out right now, but I have them at the start.
Oh, so you're showing more of the shaping and the process. Okay.
Starts with this. Then I take it to the bandsaw, and I cut what I call a blank. Now, this is what I call a blank. If you go into the magazines and stuff, they're a lot more eloquent as far as what they call a blank. But for me, I'm starting from the scratch. So I get to here, and then you can see the cuts.
Okay.
I start shaping it, and as you can see with this, I've got the arms kind of penciled in, which I do not ever put a pencil mark on them.
I was going to ask,
I do it all out of my head.
Do you draw it ahead of time, or does it just takes its three-dimensional shape as you go?
The wood tells me what it's going to do, and that sounds really.
That sounds artsy-fartsy. There you go, Butch. Now you're sounding like an artist.
It does. It sounds corny, but reality is, as I'm carving the wood, the grain, and it helps with the fact that I feel, and I do a lot of it off the feel. It feels right, or it has the right shape, or it has the right dimensions. So I carve it, and then it goes to this process. And this is one that I'm still in process of making, and this is all wood, and everything you see is wood. And so when this one gets to this point, I do a little more final touches on it, and I don't know if this sees, but all these packages are separate. This is actually pieces of wood that I carved down thin enough to make ribbon.
Wow.
I do wood burning to help bring in some of the details. This is actually wood burned. And a Dremel with a ball bit helps give me the texture. That's
where you get these little
gives me the texture.
Golf ball type texture things.
Right.
Okay.
So it goes to this process, and then I paint him, which you're holding now, is the final product. So that's kind of the
So do you ever play Santa? But you've got a little Santa thing going with the beard and all.
I've only done it a couple of times. People ask me for like a church event or something like that.
Right, for a charity or.
Yeah.
I could see it. Except for, okay, we'll also say you call yourselves the Cranky Carver. You're not really cranky, but you do give off a little bit, a little bit of a vibe now and then. You scared the boys and kept them in line at Boy Scouts, which it takes a skill.
Yeah, I've been accused of taking myself too seriously sometimes, which I think everybody does.
Really?
When you're passionate about something, and I think the cranky part comes from me being passionate about carving. I carve these for me, and people come up and go, "I think you ought to."
Oh, that's when you get cranky. I can see that.
Now the cranky comes because no, this is for me. I ought to you go home, you grab a piece of wood, you grab a knife, and you can carve it, and then you can do anything you want. This is my vision.
And that's hard because when you're an artist and you have the vision, it may or may not be as commercial as, you know, you think. Now, I just want to take this one for a second, and then we need to close. But it's very different than your other styles. Tell me how this came about.
Literally, I wanted to see how light and airy I could carve. And so I had to pick something very small and delicate. And what's more delicate than a butterfly? Mm-hmm. So I carved the butterfly, and then I actually carved the flower.
So you started first. Ooh.
Yeah, it's, like I said, it's very thin. You can almost see through it if you hold the light right. Mm-hmm. And then I carved the flower to mount the butterfly to. So this was my vision of how light and airy can I get. And you can't do that type of work with a chainsaw.
Yeah, no, you really, I can see that. Okay, so Butch, if people are interested in your art, what is the best way for them to go to your website or your Etsy store? How do they find out more information?
To find me,
besides knocking on your door right here in Hampton.
The Facebook, just look up The Cranky Carver. I have my.
You're the only one.
Thanks to my daughter and her expertise in that type of field. The Cranky Carver on Facebook. Also have an Etsy page which you can get to from my Weebly site, which is thecrankycarver.weebly.com.
I'm proud that you even know how to say that.
They made me practice last night.
I know they did. I know they did. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today and bringing all these samples of your work. It's just amazing and beautiful, and I've admired it for several years now.
Well, thank you very much.
And thank you for watching. I hope you are inspired and interested and have learned a little bit about art and carving and maybe want to sample some more of Butch's art and can go online and do so. Thanks for watching.